Congressman Sean Duffy going after the CEO of Wells Fargo, John Stumpf, today there moments ago on Capitol Hill. John Stumpf heard from a number of people there on Capitol Hill, Republicans and Democrats alike, who were scolding him heavily and asking some very heated questions about just exactly what he knew and what the bank actually did when it seems they took 2 million customers' account information and opened up phony accounts. Joining me right now with their perspective on all of it is Wall Street Journal U.S. News editor Glenn Hall and our very own Charlie Gasparino, who's there in D.C. at the hearing. Charlie, I'll start with you. It seems as though lawmakers are primed and ready for this one. Go after the big banks right now as we're heading into an election all over again. They get an easy target with Wells Fargo?
Yeah, I mean, two ways of looking at it. The Democrats do it for obvious class warfare reasons. It appears to their base. The Republicans do it for a different reason. They want to show that the Democratic regulatory apparatus that was created post-financial crisis, mainly by the Democrats, Dodd-Frank, named after two Democratic lawmakers, Mr. Dodd and Barney Frank, Chris Dodd and Barney Frank, that is not working, and that allowed this massive scandal to get through the cracks. Two things that are interesting from a news standpoint on these hearings. The usual beat up Mr. Stumpf. He didn't do, I think, a very good job deflecting the questions. But it came out during the hearings that basically confirming a report on Fox Business that Warren Buffett is engaged with the company, that Mr. Stumpf did concede that Warren Buffett did call him to express his opinions about this. That is key because Warren Buffett is the biggest shareholder. And if he starts going public, Liz Clayman's reported that he's planning to make some statement after the election that Mr. Buffett will. I mean, that could say a lot about his future. Number two was Congresswoman Maxine Waters. She came out and said point blank that she has evidence that this scandal of opening of pressure for people to open up fake checking accounts and credit card accounts and that happening, that scam happening, predated 2009. That's key because 2009 is where Wells Fargo has been investigating it. So if you go back, it's going to get worse. It's going to increase the liability. It's going to increase the amount of money they owe. So this thing is far from over.
Yeah, and Wells Fargo trading off about 1.5% right now. Charlie, Glenn Hall's with us. He's joining the conversation as well. And you heard Charlie talk about Dodd-Frank and the problems basically that arose from Dodd-Frank. Do we think that there are more banks that might have done similar things?
Well, there's indications of that. If we look through the CFPB complaint files, and there are thousands, as you would expect, against Wells Fargo, but also thousands of complaints about cross-selling at Citi, Bank of America, J.P. Morgan. So those are indications. Now, bear in mind, those aren't verified. Those are just consumers complaining to the CFPB, but that's an indication that there might be similar activity elsewhere.
Wow, Charlie, I mean, imagine that. If it's actually that widespread, then we really have a real problem on our hands. And, you know, Dodd-Frank was intended to stop all this kind of shenanigans, and yet it looks like maybe it might have encouraged it.
I mean, here's the bottom line. These banks, for better or worse, I'm not saying break them up because unscrambling the eggs is going to be very difficult. I'm not saying I advocate that, although I kind of am. But let me put it to you this way. Regulating these massive institutions is just as bad, is just as difficult as managing them. And I think let's look at it this way. John Stumpf is supposed to worry about every branch, every product being sold, whether his capital requirements are okay, whether some trader didn't screw up. That is a man. Not one man or not one management team could do that. In the old days, Jamie Dimon, when he ran a very small piece of a bank or a much smaller brokerage firm, Solomon Smith Barney, and part of which became part of Citigroup, he could go around and talk to people.
It's a lot easier.
You can't do that as much anymore.
So moral of the story, I guess we know how you feel. You're kind of advocating for smaller banks. Glenn, do we need to see the return of Glass-Steagall and basically see, no more big, gigantic supermarket banks anymore?
Well, there are just as many problems with some of the smaller banks that have come under scrutiny. So I think the challenge is cultural at Wells Fargo.
Okay.
No,
well, we'll hope it's just that.
I disagree with that. That is not true. I mean, these banks, if you look at the history of cross-selling in these banks are always getting in trouble for stuff like this. And okay, small banks, I'm sure nobody's perfect, but think of it this way. When a big bank gets in trouble, it could destroy the financial system.
Certainly impacts a larger number of customers and Americans.
And I'm just blown away by the idea that they would actually take information and falsely create accounts because it kind of seems, illegal to me. All right, Glenn, Charlie.
It is illegal.
Good to see you guys.